We're here in the beautiful Amsterdam with the one and only Justin Bonds. Justin, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. Happy to be here at the BCH Hackathon. I'm really enjoying talking to the different projects and helping out where I can as a mentor as well. And I'm just really excited to see what's going to be built, you know.
All right. So you just had a nice discussion with other sections within the Bitcoin Cash community. How do you look upon it?
That's right. So we just had a discussion, and this will be on YouTube as well. So you can look this up between myself representing Bitcoin Unlimited, Ryan X Charles representing Bitcoin SV, and Amory representing Bitcoin ABC. So it was a very interesting discussion in the sense that we have 3 of the major implementations for Bitcoin Cash, at such a time, talking about, the disagreements that we're seeing and the upcoming fork that's occurring next month, and discussing, the surrounding problems and challenges around that, and I think one thing that came from the discussion that I think is very important is that, if all of these parties, we don't actually want to see a split in the chain. But the reality is that now we have, at least in the case of Bitcoin SV and Bitcoin ABC, that these are incompatible changes. So if these changes are pushed forward, we will see a split, and that I consider unavoidable. So in my view,
what's the chance, do you think, of a split?
I think the chance is actually fairly high because no one can actually stop Bitcoin SV from running their code. And I think that's okay, and I don't think that's actually much to panic about. I think what is really significant is how significant will this other fork be? Because if it's insignificant, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I mean, there's been more like 100 forks of BTC, and people are barely even noticing anymore. So I think either way you look at it, like either the Bitcoin SV split will be insignificantly small, which means we don't need to worry about it, and if it does gather a big following, then arguably, even though I might not like it myself, arguably that might even justify its existence to an extent, because I do think that the freedom to fork and to disagree, even as a minority, I actually value that as an important mechanism that actually guarantees the freedom of the system.
Right. So, what does the investor, you're with Cyber Capital, crypto investment fund from the Netherlands, what does the investor, the trader, actually experience from this split? What are the effects?
Right, so from our experience, based on previous splits, so if we look at Ethereum Classic, and Bitcoin Cash, if the split is something that is, let's say, justified, so we have differences of opinion that are substantial enough, like in the past, actually, the total value has been higher post-split. So, for us, it's not necessarily, a bad investment, to be in a project before a split, because it's, in many ways, it's a win-win, because if you hold coins before the split, you end up having coins in both sides of the chain after the split. So in many cases, that tends to be a net gain, for us, and at the same time, it quite neatly hedges our position without us really having to do much. And this is the same for all Bitcoin holders, which I think is a very interesting aspect of the system as well, that you can have a type of Bitcoin index essentially just by holding old UTXOs.
All right, so if you hold your BCH, you probably get equal amount of BCH Lite or a BCH Core or...
Exactly, and it's the same what occurred in the previous splits. However, my hope is, and what I was trying to achieve with the talk, and also representing Bitcoin Unlimited, which is trying to take more of a compromised position. If I were to just explain Bitcoin Unlimited's position in this, it's actually that Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin ABC, they have these sets of changes that you either accept all of these changes or you don't, and it's like this either-or decision. And in my view, Right, and in my view, it's kind of like a false dichotomy, it's a false choice. So what Bitcoin Unlimited propose is, instead of having to accept either this side in completion or that side in completion, miners can actually individually vote for features in both sides, which can be individually activated on the chain, thereby avoiding a split and thereby maintaining consensus. In my view, I think that's the better path, because even though I support, the right to have freedom and to split off a chain if you don't desire it, I think to split when it's not necessary and to divide a community when it's not necessary is actually a real shame. So I think, whenever we do that, we really have to question, is this really worthwhile? And I think in this case, it's not. I mean, like we do, like all these different sides in this debate, we're really 99% agreeing with each other. We're just disagreeing over these minor issues. And I'm really hoping that we come to a point, either through Nakamoto consensus or pre-consensus, that we can just come to an agreement and, we can stay united as Bitcoin Cash, because we do have this underlying vision in common. So, that's my hope. I think as an investor, I'm not overly concerned. I think in the same sense that BCH, great, like people go their own way, people can innovate, in the direction that they want without, hampering each other in that way. And that overall I consider more positive than a negative.
Yeah, one of the things I also got from the discussion upstairs was that one of the guys was also mentioning Ethereum, and that it actually, he didn't have any confidence that Ethereum can scale. And I know you like Ethereum, so what's your answer to that?
Right, so okay, I think that I hope and I think that Ethereum will be able to scale to meet demand, which I usually emphasize as the most important aspect of these systems, is that it's not just that you need to have the most scaling now. I think what's most important is that you can continuously keep up with demand. So that's also a question of how much demand is there, what's the capacity today, and even Moore's law on its own increases our capacity for scaling without optimizations. So, and at the same time, I think Ethereum is carrying out innovations, which I have discussed with you before, like Casper, which allows you to predetermine who creates the next block, solving a lot of the propagation issues.
Constantinople we have.
Constantinople, which increase efficiency, possibility of sharding in the future. So, I think all of this is still an ongoing experiment, and I still have my hopes for Ethereum that it can scale sufficiently to meet demand. But currently, I'll be the first to admit that Ethereum is having issues with its scaling, and that's because it is trying to do more, right? So the argument, I think, for people saying that Ethereum can't scale is also an argument of, well, there's a limit to how much we can do, and there's a greater expectation of demand. Whereas in my view, I think that, I think it's better if we can do all of these things on chain, and I think time will tell, whether that's really possible in the way that.
Chain.
On chain, and time will tell really if Ethereum can achieve that. And the critique coming from, say, Bitcoin, that Ethereum is trying to do too much and therefore make scaling more difficult, which is certainly true. If you restrict a blockchain to just financial transactions, yes, then you can scale those financial transactions to much more people. However, on the other hand, if you have all these non-financial use cases, things like DAOs and all of these other type of, complex constructions, that also creates more utility, which creates more value, which creates more security, which creates more utility. This is that virtuous cycle. I think that's something that's important for, especially a protocol layer, in order to achieve that, in order to compete, and that's something that I still feel Bitcoin Cash is lacking, and I still haven't really seen evidence of Bitcoin Cash being able to carry out such more complex smart contracts like Ethereum is, which certain things like certain DAO constructions, I do see a use for that. And as it stands today, that's not something that Bitcoin Cash is capable of doing. I would love to be proven wrong about this, which is one of the reasons I'm very fascinated with this hackathon is I'm going around to all these booths and seeing if anyone can prove me wrong and build something that I wouldn't expect. But so far, I think a lot of the projects we've seen here are things we have seen before and things that, need to be built again on Bitcoin Cash. Use cases that have failed to work out on BTC because of high fees and limited transaction rates. So, in that sense, I think it's exciting, and it's, it's refreshing, and I really embrace these different points of view. And I think out of that diversity, I think we'll end up with better choices for everyone, no matter what you believe. And that's ultimately what I really believe in is that freedom of choice, and
Still in the early phases.
we're in the very early phases, all still an ongoing experiment. And I'm convinced that the perfect system doesn't exist yet. And we're in the process of building it, which is one of the reasons I'm so interested in governance, is because, the blockchain with the best governance, hypothetically at least, will evolve into the perfect blockchain, so to speak. So that's why that's been one of my major emphasis. And seeing this unfold in Bitcoin Cash, at least, is providing a lot of data, for these theories, and, really testing this in this real world experiment.
So the perfect blockchain doesn't exist yet.
No, it certainly doesn't. And I think, like some people talk about the end of history, and, human beings, we keep evolving. It's not going to end, so we need to be able to keep changing. And I think that's a very important aspect of the blockchain. And what's fascinating about Bitcoin Cash is also because of its scale, because of its passionate community, a lot of these ideas are really being tested, like a testing ground for ideas around governance, ideas about, how should Nakamoto consensus function? How does it actually function? How do we bridge the gap between what should and what is? How do we find a balance between these different ideas? This is a very exciting time to be involved in cryptocurrency, and I think everyone involved in cryptocurrency today should feel blessed that they can be a part of this history that's just unfolding before our eyes. And, I say that cryptocurrency is an experiment. I would say that the United States of America is also an ongoing social experiment. So I'm not like diminishing cryptocurrency by saying it's an experiment. It's just the nature of the beast, if you want to see it in that way.
Thank you very much, Justin,
Thank you very much.
And we can speak for hours, but I think for now, you nailed it.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
thanks.